This is chapter 10. We're going to go over forms. Forms are used for lots of different things. You guys probably use forms probably every day when you go to the internet. If not every day, um, pretty close to that. So the very first thing to know is that forms allow you to put in information, like they allow you the shipping information when you order something: name, address, city, state, country, and then you either move on to the next part of the form or you submit the form, and it allows you to capture information. The HTML and CSS allows us to set up the structure and the look and feel of the form. It does not set up what is called the functionality or the action of the form. So if you look at table 10.1, it is on page 333 of the book. It does show you the different attributes that can be added to a form. The very first two that I just kind of like to talk about are the action, where you're processing the information that is placed on the form. Most of the time that is done with back-end developers. They develop some type of script that captures the information from the form and places it into a database. The next one that I want to talk about is the autocomplete allows the browser to fill it in. That's perfectly fine. But the method of get or post. The get is the default value. It sends the information back from the form in the URL, which is not very safe. The post method is more private, and it transmits the data in the HTTP response. And this is the preferred method, is the post method. The ID and the name, these are both given to you usually by the people creating the scripts, their server-side scripts. Forms are made up of the form element or the form element and tag. It has an opening and closing tag. In the opening tag, this is where you will put the action and the method, and then you might put in a name and an ID. All of those are what we looked at on 10.1. So a form surrounds the information that a form is going to have. You have something that identifies what you're going to put in, and the input, these are the values, and this is a single inline element that allows you to say input, and then all of these attributes inside input tell you what it's going to do. So this one is an input, the type is text, the name is email, and the ID is email. Both the name and ID are given to you by your scripting programmer. So that is not something that you will just automatically make up. They are unique, and you can call them anything you want. The label, or the name of the input, allows you to know what this box element is. Without this here, email, it doesn't know what this input is for. It just looks like an empty box without going back and looking at the code. The input of type submit allows you to create a submit button with a value of sign me up. The input of reset is just the reset button. So if I go and look at these, let me bring this into a browser window. So this is what it looks like. So basically, the join our newsletter, I'm going to try to move this down, actually move it out, was the H1 above the form. So that was above the form. The email and all of this in here, this is the form. So that is the actual form, and it is created by the form element and input elements. And like I said, if you did not have this that defines it as the email, this input would just be a box right there, and you wouldn't know what you were putting in there. So that is the very first thing we looked at. Let's scroll down so I can get to that page. So there was the sample email. Input is just a single tag. The type, so these are the type text. Name is alphanumeric, no spaces. ID is alphanumeric. Both of these are given to you by a programmer. The size, you can actually define the size of the box, the max length. You can define the value, the files. You can disable it. Read only so that they just read it. If you have a form element that you just want them to read, autocomplete, autofocus, list, placeholders. Placeholders are really important because it tells people the format you want things to be placed in. Think about social security numbers and phone numbers. Do you want the dash? Do you want parentheses around the area code? Things like that for the placeholder. Required, if you're going to have the field required or not required. So if I come down here, email is just the text in front of it. The input itself is input type text, name is email, ID is email, and then you can put in required once or twice. A lot of browsers don't need required equals required anymore. Okay, we're going to do our hands-on practice 10.1, just the join our newsletter with an email, sign me up, and the reset. So it's just going to look like what we had before. We're going to just call this newsletter.html. You can call it anything you want. Just grab your template file wherever it is and do File, Save As. And I'm going to call it newsform.html. So this is going to be the newsletter that is for 10.1. Okay, and so we'll close this. We're going to, inside the body, we are going to put in our H1. It says join our newsletter. Then we're going to put in our form for email and an input of text. So our form is going to get the get method. And then we're going to have a submit button that says sign me up and a reset button. So let's get started. We're going to start with our H1 for our heading 1. And we're going to put in join From there, we're going to put in our form. We are using Emmet, so you can just put in form. It will put in the action. Right now, we don't have an action, so I'm just going to put in a pound and then a method. And the method they want us to use for this one is get. Inside, we are going to put in email. And this is what they see on the left-hand side of the box. And then the box is going to be input. And we tell it what type of input we're going to put in there. So if you do equal, you'll see all of these types that are available. We're going to scroll down and use text. And then we're going to give it a name. And like I said, this is a unique name, and we're just going to call it email and an ID, and again a unique ID, and this is going to be email. We're going to assume somebody already gave that to us. We're going to put in a BR to cause a page break. We're going to put in another input, and this input is going to be a type, and this is our submit button. So this is going to be the submit. And then we are going to have a value. And the value is what's going to be displayed in the button. And it's going to be the sign me up. Exclamation point. And we are going to have that how Okay, so that's going to be close of that. And then on the same line, we're going to have another input, and we're going to do input. And this type is going to be the reset. So we're going to put in the reset. And we don't need to change the value because we want it just to say reset. So when we're done, we will have something that looks like this, the form, the email. So the email and input are all on one line, and then this second line, these are all on one line. So let's go ahead and save that. We'll view it in a browser. Okay, so newsletter form, and there you go. Now, how would I get extra space between these? I did one line break. How would I get more space between these two? I could do another BR without doing any kind of styling. So just using the structure, I could have two BRs, and that would give me more space between the two elements. Okay, we're going to talk about checkboxes and radio buttons and the difference between the two. Checkboxes allow you to set up the form with little boxes with values next to them on the right hand side of the boxes or the left hand side of the boxes, and you're allowed to check them off as many as you like. So you can put in 1, 2, 3, or none. It doesn't force you to put anything in the checkboxes. The radio buttons need a true or false kind of statement. You could have multiple options, but you're only allowed to pick one. So checkboxes, you can put in as many as you want. You can select as many as you want, or none at all. With radio buttons, they normally require you to pick at least one. Both of those are on tables 410, I mean tables 10.4 and 10.5, where it actually talks about the type, which is checkbox or radio. It goes through the name, ID, whether it's checked, that would allow you to have a check value, um, autofocus, and whether it's required or not. Okay, here is the example of a checkbox where you can pick 1, 2, or all 3, and this is how it is coded. If you look, it is in table 10.4, so we will come down here, and here it says choose a browser. That is the content. It has a break, and then the input values it type are check, and then it gives you the name, and it actually changes the name and ID for each of the input values. On the radio button, you get to pick which one is your favorite, so you're only allowed to pick one, and the code value is input type radio. Your name is favorite. The ID gives you a different ID for each of them and a different value for each of them. One thing I want you to be aware of is as you're looking at the code, it says input type, and then it says name fave, and that name fave is on all 3 of them, because if you have a different name on all 3 of these, like your ID is different, that will allow you to select more than one radio button. But the name of fave forces it just to allow you to select a single radio button. Hidden field is the next thing we're going to talk about. The hidden field form controls or stores text or numeric information. It's not visible in the viewport or the browser. It is something that the client side or the server side scripting can use. It is also something that can help set up what's called a honeypot, and if you have a bot that's trying to fill out your form, it goes and looks at the code and just fills out a field that isn't seen by us as humans in the browser, but the computer or program sees it, fills it out, and as soon as it fills it out, we assume it's spam and throws it into a spam box. The next thing is the password. The password is just what it says. It's a password type that allows you to put in alphanumeric or characters, special characters, to create a password. It is used by the client side scripting and server side processing. And the type would be here, so it'd be input type and password. So these are all the different availabilities here, and this is what it could look like. So you could display it or not display it. So this is the code. And the next area we're going to talk about is the text area. Now this one does have an opening and closing tag. It is not the input, but it allows you to create a box so people can put information in, like comments, questions. It's a descriptive box that you can type into. You can create the text area element that has an opening and closing tag, and then you can put in a name, an ID. You can put in columns and rows. You can have a max length, and let's come down here. Right here, this is a comment. It's going to be above the text area box. The ID is going to be CM. Columns is going to be 40. Rows is going to be 2. And then here, where it says enter comments, will be inside the box, so it will look like you can try and do that. Add comments to the box. So you can add comments to the box. Okay, we're going to do 10.2. This is going to give us a contact form, and it's going to look similar to this when we're done. This form right here, when we're done. So go ahead, go back to brackets, grab your template, go ahead and select the template and do File, Save As, and call it contact.html. Go ahead and save that. And we're going to put this in contact form example. Inside the body, we will put in our H1, that is contact us. After that, we will start our form. So you can just put in the word form and press tab. It will give you an action. We are going to just put in the method of get. So you can remove the action if you want. We're just going to put in the method of get. So get and post are our two methods. And inside the form, we are going to start building it. Sorry, my book slipped. We're going to put in the first name, last name, email, and comments. Each of these areas are going to be types of text, and we're going to just put in 2 BRs to separate them out. The first name is what's going to tell us what each of the input boxes are going to be. So we're going to start with first name, colon, and I'm going to put in the input. We are going to put in an ID equal, and I'm going to just put F name, and I'm going to put in a name equal F name for first name, And then we are going to put in a type, and it is going to be text. So type's usually the second one you want to put in, and then we're going to put in two BRs so that we have space. And then we're going to do last name, another input, type, and this is going to be text also. And then we're going to put in ID equal, and again, this is going to be last name, and name equal, and it's going to be L name. So we have our first and last name fields defined. Now we're going to define the email and then comments, and we need to get a contact and a reset button. So we are going to put in email. Oh, what did I not do? I didn't put in those BRs. So I'm going to put those two BRs. We're going to put in the email. And just put in input and press tab. So it does give you a type of text, which is kind of nice. You don't even have to type that out because it already knew that. It just defaults it. I'm going to do ID equal email and name equal email. And our two BRs again. And this time it's going to be the text, I'm sorry, texts, text area. And so that will actually give us our text area. And then I'm going to just put in CM for comment, CM for comment. The one thing I'm going to put in place comment here. Inside those, I'm going to put in comment. Colon and a BR. So that forces it down to the next line. We have the columns and the rows that are already established. It says it wants us to have 4 rows and 40 columns. So we're going to just change those. From the default that came with what we set up. And then the last two things still inside the form, we're going to put in the BRs again to force it down 2 more lines. And now we're going to put in our 2 inputs. Let's see if this works. It does. Input submit, and then you can put in the value. The value we're going to put in for the submit is contact. And then right next to it, we're going to do input, colon, reset, press tab. We're not going to change the value on that one, so it's just going to be the reset. And we're going to save that. We're going to view it. And this is what it's looking. So we're placing our comment there. We don't have to put in anything between the comments. So if I don't put anything between the text area, that won't show. And so this is our contact form without any styling. Okay, so we're going to talk about the select element and the option element. The select is the parent and the option is the child. The select surrounds all of the options that are going to be in a drop-down list or a select list. It allows you to drop it down and put in more than one item. You can actually have it scroll here. So the select element goes around all of these options, and they do have opening and closing tags. So I'm going to scroll down here. So these are the attributes associated with the select, where you can let people choose multiple things in the list or not. And then the option elements are the children of the select. And so you can actually have this, you can pick one of the elements to be the selected. So if you can see here, we have select, size of 1, option, there's the first option, select your favorite browser, then option, a value of Chrome, and then option value of Firefox and option value of Edge. The value is something that can be captured on the server side or the client side to put this into a database or save it somewhere. So here we're going to have a jump menu, select, and then you have home, products, services, about, and contact. And so then you can actually go to these values that would be these different pages via the select. So the label element is the element that can be placed around the whole item here, or it can be placed around each of the titles or titles of each of the input boxes. So you have two ways that you can do it. You can actually put the label around the whole input element and the description of the input element, or you can put the label around just the description of the input element. 3, we're going to take our contact form, and where it says last name, first name, email, and comment, we are going to put labels around each of those elements just to see if it looks any different. So let's do that. We're going to surround these. So first name, I'm actually going to press return so that you can see what I'm doing here. I'm selecting this and I'm going to use my surround option, and I am just going to put in a label. And I'm going to copy that because I'm going to put it around each of the titles of each of the input elements. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to press the Enter key. And so that will put the label around the first name. I need to put a label around the last name. I need to put a label around the email. Control Shift J on a PC. I think it's Command Shift J on a Mac, but I'm not sure. And then the keyboard shortcut is Control V to paste. So we have each of these labels added to each of the title elements before each of the input boxes that show up. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go look at our page again. Again, putting the label around it is just adding more structure so that when we want to style it, it really doesn't change the look and feel of what we have here. It just allows us to put a label around it. Next thing we're going to talk about is field sets. Field sets are kind of nice because they allow you to break up a large form opposed to making people look at the whole form. It sets it up into the little blocks of information that you would like them to fill out. So a lot of times you will fill out a form when you're buying something, let's say, and you have information about the product or what type of product, and you fill that into the form. Then you have your billing information, and then you have your shipping information. So that is a way you could use a field set to break up a form. So what we're going to do is look at the field set and how it is set up. So I'm just going to kind of look at it real quick, let you guys see it here in the browser. And there is a field set here where you have the first name, last name, and email. And then the field set is the billing address that goes all the way around here. And this red box is done with styling, with the CSS styling. But it does give you the billing address and this border around the box. And normally it's black unless you modify it with styling. So that is a field set. And the field set is, I'm going to come down here into the code. So here's the field set opening on line 22 on the fieldset.html. It surrounds all of the area that is the billing address. The children of the field set are the legend and then the input, or the labels, because they have the labels surrounding all of these inside there. Now you could have the children be the legend, labels, and then input if the label just went around street and was in front of this. So that works that way too. Field sets can increase the accessibility of your web forms, making it easier for individuals with vision or mobility challenges to get to exactly where they want to go by just scanning the form really quickly and finding the field set names or labels that you have in there. So the legend, I guess it's called, not a label. So the legend here that says billing address would make it easier for somebody to just scan the form and fill out the billing address. There's more about that in the book about accessibility with forms. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our contact form and we are going to style it. Okay, so this is the way our form is looking. We are going to set up the labels and then the text boxes and then the submit button so that they all kind of lined up here. And when we're done, our form's going to look closer to this than what it did previously. So we're going to take the same form that we have with the labels and we're going to just add some CSS styles to it. Let me move this out of the way. We'll go to our contact form. We are going to do embedded styles here. So we are not going to modify this at all. We're just going to go into the top and add the styles. So in here, go ahead and open up your closing style tags. And we're going to start with the form. So we're going to style this element first, or that selector, the form, and we are going to give it a background color. So BGC for background color, and we're going to do the EA color, so it's just going to give us a gray background color. We're going to give ourselves a font family. And this is going to be Arial and sans serif. From there, we're going to give it a width, so it's going to be fairly small. a width of 350 pixels. And we are going to give it padding all the way around of 10 pixels. The next element we're going to style is going to be the label. And we are going to have it float left. But then we are going to clear left. And then we are going to display block. We're going to give it a width of 100 pixels. Padding on the right of 10 pixels. PR will do padding right with Emmett, and we're going to do 10 pixels. And then after that, we're going to do margin top. So MT for margin top, and that is going to be 10 pixels. And we are going to do text align right. The next element we're going to style is going to be the input element. And we are going to style that with a display block. So input and label were both inline, and we're changing them to block level elements to work with the display. We're going to do margin top, and we are going to change that to 10 pixels. And then the last, we're going to do text area. I'm going to close our squiggly brackets, and we're going to do display block and margin top of 10 pixels. And then the last thing they're going to have us do is we are going to do a selector type that is an attribute selector, and it is going to be an input, and we are going to put in the square brackets because it's a pseudo selector, and we're going to put in the type equal and then quotes of submit because it will look for the submit type to style. So it's kind of nice to have that. And then you do your open and close squiggly brackets. And we're going to do margin left. And we are going to change that to 110 pixels. So go ahead and save that. I'm going to review it, submit and input type reset. And we are going to put those as display inline. Not in here. And we are going to grab that and copy it. And inside our squiggly brackets here, we're going to paste that and save it. Refresh it, and we should have something that looks like this, where it has the contact and reset because they are displaying inline. They are inline elements normally, but we had said input was all block, and it was inheriting the block level styling from up here, and so when we do display inline, it fixes that. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to take the same thing and style it again, but this time we're going to style it with grid. So let's come here and take your contact form, do File, Save As, and we're going to say contact grid.html. This is going to be the hands-on practice 10.5. Go ahead and save it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take all the styles out of here. I might leave the label. Actually, I'm going to take it out. Actually, I'm going to take all of them out. We're going to go back and look at the book real quick. Look at the grid that we are going to be using to style this. So we're going to use the CSS grid format to style these. We're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to actually use the grid format, and where we'll have 1, 2, 3, and then we'll have those will be 2 columns, and then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we are going to have more than 2 labels here. We're going to have first and last name. We're going to also have this. So we're going to have we're going to have actual 6 rows and 2 columns. And we'll go ahead and style it that way. So we'll be a little different than the book, but pretty close. So we're using the same contact form that we had before. We're going to look at it real quick, make sure it has no styles now. So here's what it looks like before we start, and we're going to start with some grid styling. So here we're going to put in the form selector, open and close squiggly brackets, and we're going to start with display grid. And from there we're going to have to set up our grid template rows and our grid template columns. So we know we're going to have 5 rows. So we're just going to do auto, and we're going to do grid columns. So as you create the rows, it will automatically fix those for us also. So grid template, I don't know. Oh, there they are. Grid template rows is the first thing we're going to select, and we're going to select that in auto. So it will just create the rows as we need it. And grid template columns, and there we want to have 6 EM for the first column, and then for the second column we want it to be 1 free ratio, and so it will fix that. And then we are going to have a grid gap of 1 EM. So now we're going to have the grid gap of 1 EM. We could also use just the gap. Hopefully someday that will be not red in here. The next thing is the background color. BGC. Go ahead and press tab, and that's that EA, EA, EA. And then we are going to set the font again. Font family, and that is going to be Arial and sans serif. The next thing we're going to set up is going to be the width of 60%. And the last thing, min width of 20 EMs. And the padding of 2 EMs around all the way. Then we're going to set up so we have columns, one FR, and so the last thing we're going to do, one thing that I was noticing, I was looking at my code, because I had those BRs before I took those BRs out, or the line breaks, it was using those as children elements of the form, and so we don't want those to be used as child elements of the form, so we wanted to set up the attribute selector of input for the submit. So you can put in the quotes and just put in submit. And we will go over here and put in our open and close squiggly brackets. And we will put in grid column. And I am going to put in grid column of 2 to 3. And I am going to put in a width of 10 EM and a margin left of 0. And then I'm going to So then we're going to copy that and we're going to paste this in and put in the reset. And I want it to be grid column 2 to 3. 2, 3 to 4. So if I do 2 to 3, it will stack it, which will probably work for me. Okay, so then that'll work. So if I do the reset and this, we get this. So it looks like that. So we have all of those set up. So this actually sets it up to the second one, 2 to 3, but because they're smaller, we could do some more playing around with all of this. We could even do display inline if we wanted and put them. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is how the data from a form gets placed into a database. And honestly, it is the server-side scripting that allows this to happen. The server-side scripting is works with an attribute, and it determines the attribute is part of the form, and it determines how it's going to process the information that is put into input fields or text area fields, and then where it's going to store those. So the web page invokes server-side processing by either an attribute or a form by a hyperlink. The URL of the script is used, and then any form data that exists is passed to the script. So I'm going to move this down so that you guys can see. Basically, here we would have the form here. The browser would send the request to the server would respond and display the form, and then it would go back here, and then the server would store the data inside the database. Okay, now for the next exercise, we're going to use a script that is out to a URL. The script is a PHP script, and it will allow us to see this information showing like this, basically from our form. So if you can look here, it says this is our form, the method is post, the action is this URL, and it's https://webdevbasics.net/scripts/demo.php. You can also use this on your websites to prove that your website form is working. So I'm going to go into brackets, and we are going to add just this action here. Since it's here and I can copy it, I'm actually going to just grab that action and copy it. I'm going to go into my form. You may have to type this out, but here we have the method of get. I'm going to have to change the method to post instead of get, and I am going to paste in that action. So that action is inside the form, and it will allow us to fill out the form and get some information to display. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'm just using the same form that we used for grid. I'm going to look at it. So here is our form that we did with grid. I'm going to put in Mary White, Mary R. White, and White 32 at jccc.edu, and then this, oops, let's go here and remove that. This is a comment. Okay, so go ahead and just do that. When you hit the submit button, it should come back and give you this. And honestly, these are the fields that were laid out, and you may want to put first name, last name, email, and then comment opposed to what I have here. But these are the fields and how it works. Okay, a couple more of the input types. This one here is type of URL. It does look to see that you are placing in a URL. It will give you a message, please enter a URL if you're not putting in a URL. And honestly, what it's looking for is the @ symbol in a URL. The mobile It will allow you to put in the mobile telephone number and then the type of search. So honestly, your inputs can be like type of text, type of tell, type of URL, type of search. There are lots of different types when that dropped out box, when you're coding in brackets, drops down. You can actually see all of the different types of input that can be used. Data lists are the next type of list that we're going to talk about. With a data list, you can put in a list here where it can drop down and you can pick from a list, and that's called a data list. So the input type is text, but then instead of just having all options in here, you put a data list underneath the input type. So here you're putting in your favorite colors is the label, the input type is text, the name is color, the ID is color, but the list is colors, and that is the same as the data list ID, which is colors. So you don't want the name ID and the list all to be the same. The list and the data list ID need to be the same, but the ID in the input and the ID and the name in the input are different than the list. So this is colors, this is colors, this is color, and color. Then you put in your options. It puts down a list, and that is your data list with options, just like the select with options allowed you to put in multiple options. So that works, the list ID and the list. So the list attribute and the data list ID should be the same. Okay, setting up a range, or what some people sometimes call our spinners, so that you can pick a number. Um, that is the form, the label you put in. Choose a number 1 to 10, and then you put in an input type of number. You put in a name and ID of my choice, or anything. Honestly, the name and ID is very specific on how the program's going to use it. And then you put in a min and a max, so it tells you where you're going to start and where you're going to end. So if I look at that, you'll get this where you can actually open this up, and then you can increase the number by pushing up or decrease the number by pushing down, and that's like a spinner. With the spinners, you also have the attribute of step, so you can step by 2, you could step by 1, you could step by 10, so it'd go from 1 to 10, and you just have one selection. So you do have the availability to put in a step there also. So that would be an attribute step equal, and then you put in how many you want to move it by. So then when we look at the number again, let me go ahead and save that. We'll bring this back up, refresh this because it duplicated it. And so now as I increase it, it goes by 2. And I probably want to have my min at 0 and save it again. Look at it. And now when I come here, it will go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So when I start at 0, it goes by 2s. So the step allows you to change how many increments it's going to go by. Numerical, this one is going to go by 2. So that is the other attribute that you can use when you're using this type of number and the spinner controls. The date input is the next type that is available. This opens up a calendar so that you can pick your date. So let's go like that. And when you bring this in here and you drop this down, it opens the calendar and you can pick your date via just dropping the calendar down. You can go multiple days in advance. You can clear the date, go back to the way it was. You can just change each of these by using the up and down arrows here. So up and down by the years. So that is the date input value that allows you to get the calendar option. So color is the next, which allows you to pick up a color picker. So the type of color allows you to set up a color picker. So let's look at this in a browser. And it will show a default color here. So there it just has this black. If I select this, it opens up the color picker. I can pick any color I want. Once I pick the color, I actually have to add a custom color. Say OK. I have to pick a color. So I could pick one of these colors. And you add a custom color here and say OK, and it will show the color here. If you want to pick a color here and add a custom color and say OK, it will do it that way also. So that is a color picker, and that is with the form. So input type is color. One that I wanted to talk about was the type of range. Also, the min and max allows us to set up a slider so that you can choose a number between 1 and 100 here. And the website looks like this, where you actually have the slider where you can actually slide it back and forth. Okay, those are all of the options of the stuff that we are going to play with. And we're going to make our very last. Okay, so this is the very last form that we are going to make. So the comment, that's an H1 or H2 above the form. Required fields are marked with an asterisk. That can be a paragraph above or inside the form. And then each of these are going to be required values. So we're going to use the required attribute. The boxes are all inputs. The your first name and your last name and you at your domain, and your comments are all placeholders. And then this is a submit type. This box is a text area. These are inputs. This is an email input. This is a text input. This is a text input. And then this is a range input. So we're going to set all of these up. Let's get started. We're going to use our template file. So come over to your template file, and we are going to create our comment form. So do File, Save As, and we are just going to put in comment.html, and we're going to save that. Inside the body, we are going to start with our H1. And this is going to be a comment form. We are going to put in a form. Method is going to be posts. Action. I think I still have this set up here. Is going to be that action from that website. So I'm going to just get rid of this action word and get rid of that quote and put the quote here and close this. Honestly, I've just set this up so that when I can test it and get the values to display in my browser window. So now we have the labels. We're going to have 4 labels: first name, last name, email, rating, and comments. So I'm just going to put in label times 4, and I'm going to press tab. I'm going to go ahead and put in an input and tab, input, sorry, yeah, input. I'm going to actually copy that because I'm going to put that in 3 times, so I'm going to have to put it in one more time. Actually, I'm going to have to put it in 4 times. So, first name, last name, email. So, we'll do email. And then all I'm doing is putting that in and pressing tab. And then this one is going to be for the range. So I'm going to put that, input, and press tab. The next thing is sorry, that is supposed to be a text area, but we want one more label. So we're going to do one more label and press tab. And then after that label, sorry, that is going to be an input again. Oh, sorry, that's going to be a text area because that is going to be for the comment. And I'm going to press tab for that. And then the very last thing is it's going to be an input. And this one is going to be the submit. And I'm going to press tab. So that gives us a value that we can actually change that, but I'm not going to change that input. So this very first label is going to be for first name. So I'm going to put in an asterisk, and it's going to say first. Sorry, this is what they're going to see, so I want it capital. First name. The next thing is I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to change that to last name. So I'm going to copy that. And in the next label, in between the 2 label tags, I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to change the first to last. And then for the next label, it's going to be an asterisk and email. The next label is going to be, we want it to say range, and then in parentheses 1 through 10. So this one is going to be range 1 through 10, and then close parentheses. The last label is going to be comments, so we're going to put an asterisk and comments. Okay, so let's go look at our input areas now. So the very first input type is text, and we are going to put in an ID equal, in parentheses, F name, and then the name, and we're going to do equal, and then in parentheses, we're going to just put F name again. And we're going to do the same thing in the input for the last name. So it's going to have an ID equal, and in quotes, it's going to be L name, and the name itself will be, in quotes, L name. The email, the type will be email. So it will look to make sure that that is an email. We are going to put in an ID equal, and in quotes, that's going to be email also. And then the name is going to be equal, and in quotes, that is going to be email also. The range, the type is going to be range. We are going to have a min equal, and that is going to be 1. We're going to have a max equal, and that is going to be 10. Then we're going to have for the text area, oh, we want placeholders in all of these too. So in the input areas, not in the labels, but in the inputs, we are going to put in our placeholders. Placeholder, and the first one is your first name. So I'm just going to grab that placeholder and copy it. And I'm going to put it in the last name. And it's going to say your last name. And then on the email, the input, we're going to put in the placeholder there. And it's going to say your email. And then the placeholder for the comment is just going to say your comment here. Actually, I don't think I'm going to use the placeholder in the text area. I'm going to put it in between the two text elements. So in between those two, I'm going to actually put in your comments here. So we're going to actually save that. We're going to look at it real quick. You will see that because all of these are in line and I didn't do any BRs to make them stack on top of each other, I probably need to set up some styles so that they stack on top of each other, and or use the BR items to do that. I would like to set it up so that we have some CSS. So if I'm going to set these up as inline, I definitely, or they are inline normally, the way I can make them stack is to make them blocks. So I need to make my labels and my inputs blocks. So in the head part of the document, first of all, I'm going to change the title here, and it's going to say comment form, and then we're going to put in our style tags, open and close. These are embedded styles. We're going to put in our label, open and close squiggly brackets, and the very first thing we're going to do is have a display block, and then we are going to put in margin top, and then we're going to have a margin top, so MT, and press tab if you're using Emmet, and we're going to put in 20 pixels. And so then the next thing we're going to do is put in the input selector, and we are going to display block that, and we are going to set that to block, and we're going to have margin bottom, so MB, and we are going to put in 20 pixels there. So it just gives us space in between each of the items, and now if you look at it, you should have something that looks like this. Again, form level elements are normally considered inline elements, So if you want them to display in blocks, you just have to actually set up the styles to display them in blocks. Okay, so that's it for chapter 10. And okay, one of the first things I want to just finish up with is that we want to put in a paragraph and to make each of our things that has the asterisk by it to be the required element. So to do that, I'm going to start right after the H1 and put in a P tag. And this is just going to say asterisk indicates required fields. Okay, so you just want people to know when they see the asterisk next to each of these are required fields. Well, for them to be required, we have to go into the input and you need to put in the required. So required can just be one word, required, or you can do required equals required. So anywhere we have the asterisk, so first name and last name are required. And the email is required. And the text area is going to be required. So be aware that when you make something required, you will not let people submit the form until you place in the required fields. We will go ahead and save that. We will view it. Now, as we're looking at this, each of these required fields, if I put in something or don't put in something and try to hit the submit, it will say, please fill out this field. So that is just all it's telling you, is that you need to fill out that field. So if I do fill out this one and then I try to submit again, it just is going to keep asking you to submit the fields. So I'm just going to submit, and then again, it's just going to